Hey, it's your boy JBlue here. I'm in Bangkok, Thailand right now, but I'm not here to bring you a video about Bangkok just yet, as I just got here yesterday. Right now, I'm going to continue telling you about my motorcycle adventures throughout Vietnam. So about my fourth or fifth day in Vietnam, I left the small town of Phu Toi on the southern coast and started to drive inland so I could go up into the mountains heading towards Dalat. Now, as soon as I left the coastal roads, I started to get really out into the cut. I got into some beautiful farmland and countryside that was really no other way to say than it was just absolutely beautiful. Very remote, very sparse, not a lot of people. The roads, however, did start to get much worse. The potholes were everywhere, so you're constantly weaving your motorcycle around potholes, and you really got to pay attention because these potholes can be several feet deep, so they will eat you alive. If you hit one head on, that's a deep one, you'll be lucky if you just wreck. You'll probably ruin your motorcycle as well. But traveling through the countryside roads, I got to see a lot of the rural countryside of Vietnam, which was, again, just stunning, very picturesque. Now, before I went up into the mountains, I stopped to get some gas and fill up my tank because I knew there probably wouldn't be much on the way. And I went to the gas station. There was a guy, an attendant there, couldn't have been more than 14 or 15 years old, and they help you fill up your gas tank. And I gave him a 500 dong bill, and he was chatting me up, being all friendly, like, oh, where are you from? You know, oh, you're having fun motorcycling, blah, blah, blah. His English was pretty good. Anyway, I put in like 100 dong worth of gas and gave him a 500 dong bill. And something you have to watch out for is that I believe it's the 20s and the 200s are the same color. I think they're both like pink. So he's chatting to me, I'm chatting with him, and he gives me my change. And he gives me $40 or 40 dong back rather than 400 dong. And I looked down, I counted my money, and I was like, wait a second. I was like, dude, this is wrong. You know, you owe me 400. And he was like, oh, and like went back through his wad of money and gave me the correct change. But the more I thought about that immediately upon leaving, that was intentional. He was intentionally trying to distract me and talk with me and be all friendly, hoping I wouldn't count the change and just give me the incorrect change back so he could make, 400 dong that day, which is less than $20. But something to be careful about. Really count your change from people, especially, I guess, the rural people. I mean, they see tourists as an opportunity to maybe make a little bit of extra money, but I don't think it was an accident. I'm pretty sure it was intentional. Anyway, so as I left that gas station and really started to get into the mountainside, I was going into the high country. The roads were 2 lanes, very windy, going up the mountain. My little 110cc Honda Win could barely go up those mountains with myself and my pack on the back. There were times I literally had to put it in first gear to keep going up the mountainside because even second gear wasn't cutting it. So something to keep in mind is momentum. If you're coming up to a big hill, floor it. Go as fast as you can to hit that hill, because halfway up you're going to have to downshift into third and then probably downshift again because these little bikes, they really can't handle a 190-pound foreigner with his 10-pound, 15-pound, 20-pound bag of travel bag with him. Driving up into the mountains was just amazing. It was just such beautiful countryside. The couple times I stopped, I got some really cool photos. There were a couple places along the way where you could stop and get food or get a beer. And a lot of these little roadside places, they would sell small little bottles of gasoline, so you could fill up your tank if you needed. But on my way to Dalat, there was only really one spot I wanted to stop and see, and that was the Bo Dai waterfalls, which are these really big, massive waterfalls. That apparently it was like a tourist attraction, but they basically closed down everything, but you could still access them. You just drive right up to them. Now at this time it had started to rain, and I'm already about maybe 3,000 feet up. And I did not realize how cold Vietnam actually can become in the mountains in the rain. It was freezing. I had a whole rainproof jacket on. I was wearing a jacket and jeans, but I was still getting wet around the collar and the sleeves and my boots. The rain was really, really cold. And then at that elevation, I was like, wait a second, I'm in Vietnam. I'm in like a subtropical climate. Why is it so cold? But I stopped at the waterfalls, and they were crazy. I guess it had been raining for a while, so there was just this massive flow of water coming down. And then there were some trails that you could hike down to get to the lower set of the waterfalls and like get kind of right beside them. But it was so rainy and so misty that the trails were all rock, and they were just covered with slippery and slimy algae, and it was pretty treacherous. But I made my way most of the way down and was able to get some really good photos. And also at the waterfalls there was a miniature replica of Stonehenge, which was kind of odd but also kind of cool. So I was only there about maybe 15 minutes, checked it out, jumped back on my bike and kept riding. Now at this point it had been raining for a while, and the roads were starting to flood. And I don't mean just like, you know, an inch of water on the roads. No, I'm talking about like 3-4 inches of water on the roads. And it's just like this brown, muddy water that's just completely washing across the road. So you're driving across it, you have no idea if there's like obstructions or potholes. So it got a little dangerous, and I definitely slowed down. At one point I had to drive through a puddle that I didn't think was that deep. Turned out it was like 2 or 3 feet deep. I lifted my legs up and just kept gunning it, but the bike got really, really wet, and it started having some problems with the bike after that, which I'll go into detail later. But I continued driving up into Dalat into the rain, and Dalat is about 5,000 feet elevation, so I'm getting higher and higher and higher, and getting wetter and wetter and wetter, and obviously colder. So got into Dalat after the bike having a little bit of problems, pulled over at a store or a little shop, got them to replace the spark plugs, which I thought was the issue with it. Maybe they had gotten wet. Spark plugs, or spark plug, one spark plug wire. That cost me maybe $4. But then I got up into Dalat, checked into a really cool hotel, and took a very long hot shower because I was basically chilled to the bone. Thankfully, it stopped raining that night, and I was able to go out and explore, so I took the bike out, rode around, met a guy from Ho Chi Minh City. We hung out, had some drinks, and decided we were going to meet up the next day to take the cable car ride and go to this temple. So the next morning was really, really nice. It was bright and sunny, and I had made plans to go with this guy to see the cable car, but that wasn't until after lunch. So first I decided to go check out this kind of architectural phenomenon called the Crazy House. Some designer or architect had built this hotel house that is kind of like a living and breathing museum and slash aquarium themed. So everything is very like aquatic, underwater, nautical themed, and it's the most crazy designs that I've ever seen. It was nothing in the sense of like modern design. It was just kind of like some crazy person who decided they were just going to build this house. Crazy house, and then crazy view. And since it's called the Crazy House, it's a good moniker for that house. But it's an attraction in Dalat, which I thoroughly enjoyed. Now walking around Dalat was very interesting because I no longer felt like I was in Vietnam. I suddenly felt like I was in a typical American mountain town. There was lots of little cafes, bars, restaurants. It had a very Western feel. I don't know how many of you are familiar with, let's say, Asheville, North Carolina, but it felt like that. I kept having to remind myself that I was actually still in Vietnam because it just didn't feel like it. But I got some really, really good food just outside the Crazy House, and then went to go meet the guy from the night before to go ride the cable car. We were able to get on this cable car that took us from basically Dalat City up into another mountainside with this really big temple complex, which was really nice. Pretty cheap. I don't think it was more than like maybe $3-4 for the cable car ride, which gave you some really cool panoramic views of the area. Went around, checked out that temple for a while, which was really nice. So after the cable car ride, I got on my motorcycle. I drove around Dalat some more, just trying to check out the area. There's not a whole lot to do there, but it is very relaxing and very peaceful. Again, it's just a beautiful mountain town. It's a place that I could honestly, I could see myself living there for like 6 months to a year, just because it's so different than kind of the crazy hecticness of Vietnam everywhere else I was. I absolutely loved that town, and the weather was just, being sunny, was very cool, very crisp, had a very like autumn-like feel to it. Now my bike kept having problems, and it kept cutting out on me, and I wasn't quite sure what was wrong with it. I was thinking, well, if it keeps cutting out, and I've already replaced the spark plug and spark plug wire, maybe it's a fuel injection issue. So I brought the bike to a little shop where they proceeded to lay the bike on its side and rip apart all of the fuel lines. And sure enough, out of the fuel line comes quite a few big chunks of dirt, grime, rust, I don't know what it is. But they were able to clean out the carburetor, the fuel lines, get it all up and running again. I think I spent, again, maybe like $4. The mechanics there are so cheap, and they're all so knowledgeable, because basically 90% of the population drives motorbikes. So they're really quick, and they're really knowledgeable when it comes to repairing motorcycles. They get you back on the road in a heartbeat. So I was there about a day and a half, and I was like, well, the weather's really nice, and it looks like it's gonna rain tomorrow, so I should probably get going. So I decided I was just gonna go ahead and leave and head back down to the coast and go to Nha Trang. Now, on the way down the mountain, it started raining again, and it was even colder than the time before, or at least it felt like it to me. But that ride down the mountains was probably the most epic motorcycle ride of my entire life. Not only were the views just stunning, but it was raining, and they kept creating these waterfalls. So all along the road were these massive waterfalls just pouring water down on the side of the road, and also causing some rock slides. So there were 2 different rock slides that had just happened, and there were giant boulders and rubble debris all over the road, which I thankfully avoided, but it was kind of interesting to see that. Like, whoa, good thing I'm on a motorbike, because cars couldn't get around it. Thankfully, about halfway down the mountain, the sun came out, it stopped raining, and it just had this mist over the valley. You could see this rice paddies and terraced rice paddy fields, and a river down the bottom, and this kind of misty, with blue skies and nice juxtaposed clouds, so like just had this really beautiful look to it. And I stopped for a while, and I was just like, wow, and just sat there and looked out over the valley. But honestly, yeah, that ride down from Dalat to Nha Trang was, I have to say, probably one of the best motorcycle rides of my whole life. I did pass a couple guys coming down the mountain, or I should say I passed them and then they passed me. There were 4 guys on little scooters, probably 125 scooters. And they were going a little slower than me, so I went around them and kept going down the mountain. But it's pretty steep and the roads are wet, so I was being pretty cautious. I didn't trust the bike, didn't trust the wheels on the bike or anything. And then not 5 minutes later, one of the guys in that group comes flying by me, and he is just leaning into those corners, like scraping his knees, just probably hitting 60, 70, 80 kilometers an hour coming down the mountain. Now mind you, there's not a lot of guardrails, so, and if there are guardrails, you can easily go underneath them or over them. And I was thinking to myself, that guy is a badass, because there was no way I was going to go that fast coming down that mountain on wet roads on a bike I didn't trust. And then of course down at the bottom of the mountain I see him sitting, just waiting, looking at the mountain, waiting for his buddies to come down. From there it led into a rice paddy river valley with just a winding river that we kind of kept driving beside and crossing over. And even that valley was just amazing. This huge flat valley with these high mountains on all sides and thunder clouds in the background. It was really, really pretty. That was about where the beauty of that trip ended. As I got closer and closer to Nha Trang, the roads just became the nightmare Vietnam motorcycle roads that you're familiar with. Very, very bad traffic, people and motorbikes and cars everywhere. And yeah, drove into Nha Trang, got a hotel on the beach, and spent like several days there, which I'll talk about in the next video. But if you are in Vietnam and you're riding motorcycles, I highly recommend you make a trip, whichever direction you're going, go up into the mountains, go to Dalat, check it out. The ride there, again, is just amazing. It's so beautiful. Yeah, and thank you for watching this video, for liking, subscribing, commenting. I will be back next week with a video from Bangkok, Thailand. So thanks again. See you next week.